لم يبقى الآن قوات الاحتلال تطلق القنابل في داخل المستشفى. نحن نتحدث عن مستشفى لا نتحدث عن.
Okay, so if it's not clear from what you just saw right there, those are mourners carrying the coffin of the recently slain journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who are being charged by Israeli forces, being like knocked into by them and nearly losing control of the coffin. We're gonna explain the rationale that's been given by Israel as to why what you just saw had to happen, but first I want you to see more of the footage.
الكنيسة كليل الزهور كما نرى صورة قمع مشهد يصعب وصفه. التابوت الآن
مشهد مؤلم بكل تأكيد على الهواء مباشرة. قوات الاحتلال نعم تعتدي على شبان.
التابوت لم يبقى الآن قوات الاحتلال تطلق القنابل في داخل المستشفى. نحن نتحدث عن مستشفى لا نتحدث عن.
If you're only listening, you might have heard what sounds like multiple flashbangs going off, and you wouldn't then have seen a massive crowd of full riot gear equipped security forces running around and wildly having at the mourners, who had gathered to take the coffin from a hospital in East Jerusalem to a church for Abu Akleh's funeral. That's all it was. And I personally cannot conceive of what possible rationale you could have for what we just saw, but they're gonna try to justify it. They said that the crowd was chanting nationalist incitement, okay?
Yeah.
The officers had given them a warning, so if you give them a warning, then it is justified to do what they did. They said they were forced to act because rioters began throwing stones towards the policemen. Now, they wanted to demonstrate that. That is being presented as evidence. So they distributed videos showing an empty plastic bottle and two other bottle-shaped objects being thrown in the direction of officers. They had undated video showing several stones on the ground, so I'm convinced. No, but seriously, like the issue that the forces had was that they could not take the fact that these mourners were chanting nationalist incitement. They thought that, well, we just can't abide that. But they're in a situation where the incident you just saw could have gone one of a couple different ways. They could have chanted the national incitement at you, and then there was no violence, and everybody goes on about their day, dealing with this incredibly difficult situation as the best they can. Now imagine if you just had that play out for years and years, where you actually used restraint and you didn't brutalize these people. Is it possible that there would be less nationalist incitement being chanted at you? No, instead there was a chant and they immediately began to beat people, masses of people, dozens of people, knocking a coffin to the ground. Is it possible that that will lead to more nationalist incitement? This is all incredibly simple. Nobody should have to explain this, and nobody should have to demonstrate it, considering that we are many decades into this same cycle being played out on a daily basis. But what do I know? I didn't have a bottle thrown at me, I guess, so maybe I don't understand the situation.
Yeah, so there's the short-term problems here and the long-term problems. In terms of short-term issues, so our right wing will of course say Israel's right about everything, forgetting all theoretical principles that they have. Now Israel's a different country, they have different laws on freedom of speech, but our right wing says freedom of speech is the most important thing in the world. They were beaten for a chant. Oh, it was a nationalistic chant. Wait, I thought the right wing loved nationalism. Oh, nationalism for you, but not for anyone else, right? And so that was right to beat them over a chant. Oh, to be fair, there was an empty plastic bottle. And by the way, the right wing would say that's self-defense. Kyle Rittenhouse killed someone over because they threw an empty plastic bag at him. So to the right wing, they're like, oh, why didn't they just kill everybody at the funeral? Maybe the easier way to go. And so, look, the journalist herself was killed, and it looks like likely Israeli terrorism. Wait, I just called it terrorism. You're not allowed to do that. No, when random people kill civilians, we call that terrorism. Or a non-state actor kills someone, we call that terrorism. But when a state kills someone, that's awesome. That's called freedom. Is it? No, it's still terrorism, right? Killing a civilian, killing a civilian. And why? Why do they do it? Oh, well, because we have to imprison all the Palestinians. We have to keep them in occupied territories and never give them a state. That's your justification? But why? Well, they're savages. If we gave them a state, they're so violent by nature, they would definitely attack us. Is that right? I mean, is that your real ideology? No, but seriously, I've heard this my entire life as if it wasn't racist. Well, the Palestinians would attack Israel. Why would they attack Israel? Well, Muslims, you know how they are. In this case, by the way, the reporter is Christian, but it doesn't matter, Palestinian savages. No, the people actually doing the violence, the state violence, which is much more significant, kills much more civilians, and has held millions of people hostage for now what, over 50 years? Are we past 60 years now? How long are you going to keep them hostage because of your racism? I know that hurts a lot of people's feelings, I do. You know what hurts people's feelings more? Being murdered, and then as they're carrying your coffin, attacking the pallbearers. That hurts feelings a little bit more, but I know they're Palestinians, they don't count, do they?
This is hard to talk about this. I swear I'm gonna connect it to what we just showed, but Nina Turner's loss last week had, I think, me and a lot of people on the left thinking about the influence of Israel on the mindset in the United States about the apartheid in Palestine and the treatment of the Palestinian people by Israel. Nina Turner's opponent, Shontel Brown, was bankrolled by the American Israel PAC and the Democratic Majority for Israel. And of course, key progressives decided to endorse Shontel Brown through the CPC, while we had AOC and Bernie Sanders endorsing Nina Turner. Of course, AOC endorsed pretty last minute. But I think this signaled that progressives were afraid to get involved, not because they believe they were outspent, because we've always said that we believe organized people beats organized money. So that can't be what was going on here. But it is the case that progressives still don't condemn what's happening in Palestine. And I think a lot of this is because of the spending of groups like AIPAC, and because American mainstream media is so one-sided and so pro-Israel that Americans have a hard time making up their mind about this when they're just getting one side of this. So the type of organizing we need to do as progressives to win in races where DMFI is bankrolling opponents is gonna have to involve a conversation around Israel and Palestine, and that's a really hard conversation. But we're at the point where we have people like the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that what he sees happening in Palestine reminds him of their own history of apartheid. So if you think that if apartheid in South Africa was happening today and you would be against it, but you're not condemning what's going on in Palestine, you're probably wrong. And that's hard to say, but it is the case that the United States never has a good track record on this stuff. When the United Nations was condemning apartheid in South Africa, or when the United Nations did that, the United States didn't join in for 30 years later. And so we've really been behind on a lot of international issues like this. And it's gonna have to involve really tough organizing if we're gonna beat out these PACs, because they're gonna keep spending money.
Okay, I'll just clarify one thing. It sucks and I hate it, but I know for a fact that the progressives were scared of the money. And so Democratic Majority for Israel and a couple of other PACs that are right-wing Israeli PACs, or PACs that support Israel, didn't want to just defeat Nina Turner because they said she believed in Palestinian rights. Of course not. It's how dare she? How dare she believe that Palestinians are actually human beings like the rest of us? And they say they're not racist. Okay, but it wasn't just to defeat her. It was to send a message. If you dare oppose Israel, our lobbyists and our PACs will come spend millions and millions and millions of dollars against you. Now that's a super uncomfortable fact, especially because the history of anti-Semitism connects to Jews in different countries controlling the politicians. And that was not the case, and that is not the case here in America today. It wasn't true in the past, not true today. And some of the best progressives in the country are Jewish, and they're battling the right-wing Israeli PACs, okay? But is it true that those PACs spent millions of dollars to send a message? Of course it is. What do you think they just did it for fun? They're just like PACs and lobbyists are not interested in their cause when the cause is called Democratic majority for Israel. We have mainstream media that just like says absurd things like, no, they're not for Israel. Then why did they call it for Israel? They're for Cleveland. Are they? Are they? Because they didn't. It's not called that. So it's, of course the lobbyists matter. Of course millions of dollars matter. Did it intimidate progressives and other Democrats in Congress? I can tell you for a fact, yes, the money did intimidate them. And yes, the money is real, no matter what Jake Tapper tells you. No, politicians are great, but lobbyists are great, PACs are great. But ignore it, ignore it. Ignore the reality, ignore the facts. So no, nobody in America is gonna do anything. They defeated Nina Turner. They're scared to death of these PACs. So now Israel has carte blanche. They could kill people, and then when they're at their funeral, they could beat the living crap out of the people who came to mourn. There'd be no consequences. The American government has given them a blank check. And by the way, the other countries in the world, you idiots, politicians are for sale. You could all buy them. It's not about Jews or non-Jews. That's crazy talk. Poland can come and buy all of our politicians. They're all for sale. It's so easy. You just spend a couple of $1 million in one prominent race, and then all the American politicians, since everything is about bribery in America, you could be Norwegian, you could be, I mean, by the way, the Palestinians, your best shot is collect all of your money and bribe American politicians. Maybe you could bribe them more than the other side. It doesn't matter. Iran, by the way, Saudi Arabia does do it. United Arab Emirates does do it. They bribe almost all of our politicians through PACs and lobbyists. Oh, I didn't give directly.
They can't coordinate, Cenk.
Well, they're not coordinating at all. Nobody had any idea what happened in that Cleveland election. Just because Democratic majority for Israel spent the most amount of money, no one has any idea who did it. No, we know what happened. And by the way, it wasn't just them. Guys, do not get into demagoguing and anti-Semitism. There was the oil lobby in there was drug companies in there. Chantel Brown put up a giant sign that said for sale. And everybody who wanted to buy a politician and came and gave her tons and tons of money. Yep. So look, coming back to Israel for 1 second. I know what good people who love Israel are gonna say, Cenk, it's not, you're not being unfair. It's not just racism. The Palestinians have done terrorism all these years. But what do you think Israel did? You don't think it's violence to keep them occupied for 60 years? You don't think that's violence? Oh, well, if you cross the border, we kill you. Without permission. We covered that a couple of years ago. Remember when they were starting to do protests near the border, not even up to the border. They were like a huge distance away from the border. Anyone who came close, boom, murdered. Doctors murdered, nurses murdered, journalists murdered. Yes, I'm sorry, I know it hurts your feelings, but they were murdered by the state. And that is also terrorism. That is also mass violence. And you know it's true, because imagine, you could fill in any blanks here, but I'm gonna go historic here. Imagine if the Germans had kept the Jews occupied for 60 years. They said, what? We're worried about the Jews. We're worried about their nature. So we're just gonna keep them occupied for 60 years. And if the Jews ever resist, we're gonna call them terrorists. And we're gonna see, that's why we can't give the Jews freedom, because they're all terrorists, because they resisted. Now, in reality, of course, the Germans did far worse. They actually killed them, okay? So that's why it's important to be clear. Yes, it's a historical analogy, but the Nazis were far, far worse. They set up gas chambers and they killed those poor people. Now, but you don't want, I don't know, any decent person doesn't want to go 1% of the way there. There's not one single logical and non-racist explanation for why you have kept the Palestinians imprisoned, beaten, and killed for this many decades. God damn it, let them go already.
Yeah, when we have videos like this, I think it's useful, but it's so rare that we see videos like this in mainstream American media, but you can find them online everywhere. And it's pretty easy to decide where you fall on the issue. When it's on video, you can see the atrocities, you can see what's going wrong. And so a lot of people say the issue is so complicated. That's fine, it can be complicated, but you can still clearly see when something wrong is going on.
Yeah, and by the way, John, it is not at all complicated. That is nothing but an excuse. Millions of people are imprisoned and not allowed to have their own government and their own freedom. It's not remotely complicated. Oh, but somebody did a bombing 17 years ago, 3 years ago. Oh, wow, they sent a missile over 3 months ago. They're occupied. How, basically, I swear to you, I love you guys, but you're literally saying, how dare they want their freedom? Don't they know their place? Their place is to be our prisoners. Look, and for the anti-Semites, no, I want there to be a wonderful, strong, healthy Israel. But this ain't it. And as long as you keep those people occupied, you're never gonna get to feel great about Israel. You're never gonna have the moral high ground. You've got to change. Otherwise, I can't believe you've become the bad guys. And if, guys, not everybody thinks the same. Do not think it's the Jews, it's not. Okay, there's right wing and left wing in every country. And if you're not in Israel, you're not responsible for Israel. So please, for God's sake, use normal judgment and don't counter the occupation with your own racism and your own bigotry.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.